Good day, my name is Rinda Blom. I am the director of the Red Shoe Play Therapy Training Center in Bloemfontein, South Africa. And this morning I'm going to talk about the Rosebush projection technique that you would also find in my book, The Handbook of Gestalt Play Therapy, Practical Guidelines for Child Therapists, which is published by Jessica Kingsley in London, England. So when we do the Rosebush projection with children, and I love to use this as an assessment technique, the first thing that you would do is to ask the child or to say to the child, today we're going to play an imaginary game, and do you know what that means to imagine something? And I would normally say to younger children, it means to think something in your head. Like imagine you're at the ocean, or you imagine you're at the school. It means you think it in your head. So today we're going to play an imaginary game around a rose bush. And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to imagine that you are a rose bush. And then while your eyes are closed, I'm going to ask you all kinds of questions like, where do you stand and how do you look, etc. And what I would say to the child is, don't answer me because it would be a surprise. So just think it in your head, and when you open your eyes and I'm going to ask you to draw that rose bush, and then you're going to tell me about it. All right, so what we would then say to the child is, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to imagine that you are a rose bush. So I want you to think, are you a strong rose bush or a weak rose bush? And I want you to think, do you have flowers on it? If you have flowers, are they roses? Then I want you to think, do you have leaves? I want you to think, do you have thorns? And if you have thorns, are they sharp or blunt, or don't you have any thorns? Next, I want you to think, do you have leaves, and how do they look? I want you to think about your branches and your stem. Is it thick or thin? And I want you to think, do you have roots? And if you have roots, are they deep or are they shallow? Right, next I want you to think, where do you stand? Are you standing in a pot or in a garden or in the ocean or in the desert or in the middle of the sea, in the field? Where are you standing? What is standing around you? Are there other trees or flowers, or maybe nothing? Maybe you're standing alone, or maybe there's a fence. Is there something around you like a fence? How does the environment look like? And then I want you to think, is there anyone taking care of you? And if there's someone taking care of you, who is it? Do you get enough water? How do you feel to be a rose bush? And then lastly, how's the weather today? Is it sunny or rainy or cloudy? Now, I would definitely not ask it in this quick way that I'm doing it now for the demonstration. So I would give the child some brief moments of quietness after each question to just, really have the opportunity to imagine that and to connect with their projection in their mind. So after the child has imagined that, I would ask the child to draw that rose bush on the paper. So this is just a drawing that I've done here for sake of demonstration, which can be an example of how a rose bush might look like. So how do I handle the drawing after the child has drawn it? So the first thing that I would ask the child is, tell me about your rose bush. And I would write down the child's responses. So I would ask the child to give the rose bush a voice as if they are the rose bush. So the child would say, I'm the rose bush, and I might say, hello rose bush, do you have roses on? The child might say, yes, I have a lot of red roses. And are they open or buds? No, they are, like just starting to get open. And tell me about your leaves. And the child might say, I don't have any leaves. And did you see any thorns? No, I don't have any thorns. And what about your root system? No, I also don't have roots. So tell me more about this brown drawings, the things that is next to the rosebush. And maybe the child would say, well, that is the rosebush thorns and they are very big. Okay, and I would write everything down. I have very big thorns that's standing next to me. Tell me more about the environment. I'm standing alone. Next to me there are very big thorns and there's a thunderstorm at the moment and it's raining a lot. Okay, so who's taking care of you? No one's taking care of me. It's just the weather. And at this stage, it is really, I'm standing in a storm. I would write that down, and then after that, I would again start with my can it be question. So maybe I would now start with the roses, and I would say to the child, roses are what makes a rose bush pretty. Can you tell me, I see you have little roses here, maybe you can tell me about 5 or 7 good things in your life. That can be good things in yourself or good things in your environment. Maybe things that you're good at, that could also be people in your life. Maybe the child would say, okay, but that is my school, or that is my friends, or someone else. And then I would say to the child, what do you think are the work of the thorns for a rosebush? Child might or might not be able to say it's to protect. If the child's not able, I would assist the child in this. So if we come to protection, I would ask the child, the rose bush doesn't have its own own thorns, but there is very, very big thorns next to the rose bush. Can it be that this rose bush has a high need for protection? Maybe the child say yes or no, and then you can also, who do you think, if this rose bush is you, who in your life can it be that is protecting you like this thorns? And maybe the child might say, my parents, or when I'm fighting with other children, or when I'm hitting or kicking other children, or when I'm nasty with friends and I'm keeping them away from me. Or the child might say, maybe say that's a person. Then we move to, you are standing very much alone. Can it be that you also feel like this alone at school when you are fighting with other children a lot and you're keeping them actually away from you with these big thorns? And the child might or might not own that and say, yes, it's true, or no, it's not true. Then we move to, do you also feel this alone sometimes in your life? Maybe the child has already in assessment tell you that they feel very much alone sometimes, and that there's no one taking care of them. The next thing is then you can focus on, so who's taking care of you? There's no one taking care of me. Who is taking care of me is the weather. But okay, but you did say there's a storm. So can it be that this storm can harm the rosebush? And maybe the child can say, yes, the storm can hurt or harm the rosebush. And we can talk about, okay, so what might happen if the storm is going on? And maybe the child will say, but the storm can destroy the rosebush. Now, normally water is a sign of very some emotion, and if a child would say that there's a storm, it might most definitely mean that the child feel like he or she is standing in that storm alone. Maybe one of your can it be questions can it be that you feel like this when your mom and dad is fighting all the time? Or can it be that you feel like in your life you're standing in the storm at school because no one likes you, or because the teacher shouted you, or because whatever reason you already know about. So this would definitely depict that that the child is experiencing an enormous amount of emotional conflict in him or herself, and also is under distress, definitely so. The root system is normally refers to early childhood development, or also if the rosebush doesn't have any root system, it definitely shows us that this bush is feeling very much ungrounded. So I would for sure, maybe the child would not be able to own this, but you might ask, do you sometimes feel unsafe, and do you sometimes feel that you're not very secure like this rosebush? But I would also make myself a mental note that it can mean that there was early childhood wounding, or maybe even attachment problems. Sometimes children will also do that if they maybe have recently moved to another place and they don't feel as grounded and secure there already. Okay, so in terms of the can it be questions, I want to say again that if you start asking the can it be questions and the child, you ask maybe can it be that you feel that you have to protect yourself, or can it be that the thorns come out when you're bullying other children or when you get very angry, and the child just keep on saying no, no, no. We call that in gestalt play therapy the child's breaking contact. And I would not go on and on asking can it be questions if the child don't want to own the projection. The mere fact of looking at this picture already gives you a good indication of how the child feels. And I would say in summary, in terms of assessment, that the child feels a need to deflect, which means to break contact and to keep other people away, and that is the work of the big thorns. The big thorns can also mean I have to protect myself. Now, the main thing that we see here is that the thorns is not part of the rosebush, but it's something outside of the rosebush. The third thing that we see is there's a lack of a root system. So this child might also have a high level of anxiety that come out in angry outbursts, which is reflected by the thorns. And the fourth thing is that we see the child feels like he or she is standing in kind of a storm. Okay, that's enough about the rosebush. Definitely one of my most favorite projective techniques.